Alright, here we have a vector geometry example from the vectors chapter. Essentially, we are given a shape. We're given OA is equal to x, OB is equal to y, so we've renamed a couple of the vectors, and we are asked to express a bunch of new vectors in terms of x and y. So this type of exercise is probably a lot more straightforward than it looks. It's a problem-solving question where you're essentially only allowed to use x and y to get anywhere. So if I want to start, we have our regular hexagon. I'm allowed to use a couple of the properties that I know from geometry, like the fact that these sides are parallel, etc. And I'm just going to trace from A to B, only using x and y, from B to C, only using x and y, from A to D, only using x and y, etc. So we're going to start off with AB. So, to get from A to B, obviously the easiest way is to do this to that, but I can only use the red and the green arrows. And when we're dealing with vectors, it doesn't actually matter how many detours I take, it is exactly the same vector. So I can see right away that this is directly connected using the ones that have been written on there. I'm going to go from A to O, which is backwards x, and then from O to B, which is forward y. So I can literally just write this like this, AO plus OB. And that right there is x, but going the other direction, so it's going to be minus x plus y. And that's the answer. So this one's a little bit more straightforward because they're actually directly connected, but if I were to do part 2 where I'm doing BC, this is already a problem because I'm not actually directly connected to any of the red ones, but I got a little green one there. So somehow I need to get from B to C using only these steps. So it might be useful to actually write down all the different vectors that we recognize. So using the fact that parallel and same direction properties, this I know is the same as x because of the properties of a hexagon. We're allowed to assume that this is also the same as x. So I could technically go from B to E just using that step there. So this is BE plus EC, which it turns out is actually going to be a jump that is exactly the same as that one there. So that is the same as that and that. So I'm going to go back 2x's. Using these moves, this is going to be backwards 2x and then forwards 1y. And we just apply the same logic to the others. So in 3, I'm looking to get from A to D. We've got our x right here attached to it, so I'm probably going to use that. I'm just going to follow all the lines on the hexagon. If I go back 1x, and then I go across 1y, and then I go back 2 x's, much in the same way as we did with the previous question, and then I go across 1y again, and then I can go across 1x one more time, and I end up very zigzaggy, but I end up from A to D. So I could have done this just by doing it geometrically like that, and we can see that if I write this as AO plus OB plus BE plus EC plus CD, I can write that as minus x plus y minus 2x, because we're going backwards along the x direction, plus y minus x. I end up with minus 4x plus 2y. But it turns out I didn't actually need to break it down because we noticed that we've repeated some of the steps. So technically, I'm actually allowed to use what I've seen before. So I could do from A to B, B to C, and C to D, for example. And the reason that that's helpful is because I've already broken those two down. That's AB plus BC plus CD. I don't know CD, but I can figure it out. But AB, I've already done the hard work. That's minus x plus y. And then BC, I've done the hard work again, that's minus 2x plus y, and then CD itself is just going to be another x going backwards, minus x. And regrouping this, I get exactly the same answer as here, that's minus 4x plus 2y. Finally here, if I want to do BD, well this one, BCCD, I could either use the path that I've already written down, which is minus 2x plus y, or I could write it as BC plus CD and just reuse my BC from over here. Either way, I may as well just reuse all of this. So this is going to be minus 2x plus y, and then CD we saw before was just another minus x. So this is minus 3x plus y. And again, if I just started here and followed the arrows I'd already done, that's minus x plus y minus x, which is exactly the same thing as this. So it gets a little bit confusing sometimes, but it's just use the two things that they start off with, and essentially those are the only tools you're allowed to use, and we can use that to then just map our way from point to point. There we go.